everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I'm going to bring you my November reading wrap-up. November, surprisingly, ended up being my best reading month of the entire year. And this fall has been a struggle for me to pick up books and for me to find anything, so I am pleasantly surprised that I wound up reading as many books as I did during the month of November. I feel very accomplished having read these books because these are also not tiny books. A lot of these are massive books and I don't know where I found the strength to even make it through them all. Now I will say that like two of these books were books that I was still finishing from the month of October. So it kind of feels cheating, but like I couldn't finish them in October, so they're here in November because I finished them the first week of November. We have a special guest, as you can see. Okay, so the first one that I want to mention is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So for those of you who remember my October wrap-up, I was feeling very slumpy. I had to go out of town, come back. That really disrupted my reading. And so for September and October, I just kind of powered through the first 6 books of the Harry Potter series because I just knew it would help me keep my momentum up. I didn't want to lose my reading momentum even though I was feeling particularly slumpy. So Harry Potter helped me out with that. Of course, 5 out of 5 stars. Harry Potter, ultimate stand down with Lord Voldemort. That's all you need to know about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. This next book that I finished also was a very big challenge for me because it's definitely not something that is in my wheelhouse. And I'm talking about Needful Things, written by Stephen King. So this ended up being the very first Stephen King novel that I had picked up. I worked on it through October and there was just no way I could finish in October, so I did finish it in the first week of November. And I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. This book follows a town in Maine called Castle Rock, Maine. The different inhabitants of the town, it's small town life. There's roles that people play. There's prejudices that people have. And there's just various inner workings to this town. So one day, something new to the town shakes things up, and that is a store, a curiosities shop called Needful Things. It's opened by a man named Leland Gaunt. And everything in the store, people are going crazy over it because it just seems to be that there is at least one item in the store that everybody loves and everybody wants. And Leland Gaunt does not deal in money necessarily. He deals in favors. He'll allow you to pay what you think is worth because he wants to make the sale for the thing that you really need and the thing that you really want. There's also a little bit of a supernatural plot line here. This is something that I definitely picked up for the month of October because I wanted something spooky. I wanted to try horror, but not like totally dip my toes in like jump out at your face horror. So this one was very like unsettling. It just left me very unsettled. I felt very, very gross, like internally, not like I was reading gross things. Some of the stuff was gross, but I felt yucky reading it. So if that was the point of this book, Stephen King definitely accomplished it. But it was very, very long. I definitely plan on giving more Stephen King books a shot. I really liked the characters. I just really liked getting into the heads of these characters. We definitely follow along different perspectives of different people within the town, including Leland Gaunt, so we kind of know that he's got, you know, tricks up his sleeve the whole time. But one of the things that, like, it could have been a 4-star, except for the length, but one of the things that I just didn't like, the over-sexualized internal monologue of an 11-year-old, but it didn't happen for very long of the book. And then I remembered some people's complaints about it and how that storyline was like necessary to the plot or whatever. But anyways, so that part I didn't like so much, but whatever, it was only a small portion, and it certainly wasn't the worst character to follow along with either. But anyway, so it was a 3 out of 5 star read. I did enjoy it. I do plan on picking up more Stephen King. These 2 books were books that I was working on when I was feeling particularly slumpy, but one of them moved faster than the other. So that's where Mr. Mercedes comes into play. This is another novel by Stephen King. So this is book number 1 of his Bill Hodges trilogy, following our main character, Bill Hodges. He's a retired police detective, and in his retirement, he's feeling like pretty miserable because he no longer has things to do in his life. A bunch of people in the town witnessed this very public group killing by a person who was driving a Mercedes into a crowd of people. And Bill Hodges was on the detective force when this happened, and this case goes unsolved, and then he ends up retiring before it's solved. So the killer, the Mercedes killer, ends up contacting him via post office and starts kind of riling Bill Hodges up. He decides to put his detective skills to use and trying to figure out what's going on. I liked this much better than Needful Things in terms of Stephen King books. So I feel like they're two vastly different books. This one is definitely like mystery thriller, detective story, which I really enjoy, and I wanted to read some of these during the fall and winter season. Needful Things was definitely more creepy, unsettling, sinister. So just a wide range of my feelings about Stephen King this month. I did rate this book 4 out of 5 stars. I flew through this book. Again, another really unsettling kind of villain in here, and we do get to follow along with his perspectives as well as Bill Hodges' perspectives, and that's why I really liked it, just like the back and forth and seeing like how far behind the killer Bill Hodges was and wondering if he'll ever catch up to him and all that good stuff. So this was a very, very fun read. Thank you to everyone who recommended this book to me, because this one was highly recommended on my Twitter page when I asked for some Stephen King recommendations. So yes, this one got 4 out of 5 stars. So that brings us to 12 Kings, written by Bradley Boleo. This is book number 1 of a fantasy series, and it is a desert fantasy series. And this was the book club pick for my book club for the month of November. And I am sad to say that I DNF'd this one around 30% of the book. But I don't feel like it's a forever DNF. So my decision to DNF this one was just because I was so slumpy. There were some good things happening in this book, but there was no kind of hook to keep me going, to help me move past this slump. So I don't see this as a forever DNF, but it is a right now DNF. And because of like the slumpy feelings I was having, I don't feel like I could accurately rate this book, but right now I was feeling it was like a 3-star read. We follow a young woman named Cheda. She has grown up in this city of Sherkai, which is this big, beautiful, bright, vast city in the desert. It's like the jewel of the desert. Lots of trade happens in here. And there are these sacred nights that nobody in Sherkai is allowed out on the streets, because the city is ruled by these 12 kings, and something very sacred and holy happens on these nights, so everybody must stay inside. But she ends up finding herself outside on one of these nights and witnesses something that she should not have seen, and things go on from there. She's like embroiled in like a mystery plot, figuring out what it is she saw. There's a lot of mystical things that are happening, and then the kind of people that she keeps running into have their own agendas, and so we've got like that side storyline going on while she's immediately trying to figure out this mystery. Yeah, I was just very, very slumpy for it. I did like a lot of the world building stuff. I have been having a good time with some desert fantasy lately. This one was cool because like they had these like sand ships or skiffs to allow people to cross the desert a lot quicker. So when they talked about ports and docks and all those things, in my mind I'm still thinking about like water, but no, it was like you can take a skiff out on the desert. That was like one of the cool world building pieces that I had enjoyed thus far. But yeah, right now it's just not happening. So once I made the choice to DNF this, then November ramped up and I finished 5 books for the rest of the month. So the first book in my like reinvigorated November reading is Faireborn, written by Claire Legrand. This is book number 1 of the Imperium trilogy. This is a young adult fantasy novel. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. I am telling you, Faireborn ended up saving my fall reading for me. I don't know what drew me to pick up this book. Maybe it was the cover, I don't know, but I just decided to give this one a shot, and I'm really glad that I did. So this one follows 2 different women, Riel and Eliana. These 2 women are very special because their timelines take place 1,000 years apart from one another. So we follow Riel's timeline. She is friends of the Crown Prince and his cousin slash fiance. They've been a threesome growing up for a very long time, and they're all best friends. And then 1,000 years later, we follow Eliana, who is like a young, I don't want to say she's a bounty hunter. I've been watching The Mandalorian, and she's not a bounty hunter, but she conducts Well, she is a bounty hunter. No, she is a bounty hunter. Riel is a woman who finds herself with this kind of power that her father and I believe it's the Archon of the religion, they see this power inside her too, and they try and suppress it and try and train her to control herself. But it's been building and building and building until she can no longer control it. It bursts outward from her, and people realize that she has this power. They believe her to be one of these two prophesied queens, the Sun Queen or the Blood Queen, and she must undergo 7 trials to determine whether or not if she's one of these queens. The Sun Queen / Blood Queen timeline and this prophecy directly affects in the future what is going on with Eliana and the reason why that she is bounty hunting. A lot of good stuff in here. I didn't even scratch the surface of all the good stuff in here, but definitely one of my favorite books that I read this year. I'm telling you, the YA has been killing it for me this entire year. So this was a very pleasantly surprised pickup that I had for the month of November. It was not on my original TBR, but I'm glad that I got to it. So this is Faireborn, written by Claire Legrand. And then I read Queen of Nothing, and Queen of Nothing was a 5-star read, even though objectively it's not that great. It's the shortest of the entire trilogy. This is the last installment to the Folk of the Air trilogy, being The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King, and now The Queen of Nothing. This is one series that I am just like, all rationality goes out the window, and I love every single bit of it. So this was a definite 5-star read. I did purchase, if you saw my November book haul, I did purchase the Barnes & Noble edition, which is this one, because it has an additional excerpt of some letters from Prince Cardan. 5 out of 5-star read. Again, these 2 books like completely saved my November reading month, and I'm really glad I picked this one up as well. So if you didn't check out my last reading vlog that I posted, these 3 books, Faireborn, Queen of Nothing, and now Dark Dawn, were 3 books that I finished in one weekend. I can't even tell you the last time that happened where I was just moving through books so quickly. And again, I'm just like really glad that I did make the decision to DNF 12 Kings, because I wouldn't have had the motivation to get through some other books. And I'm really glad I got through Dark Dawn. So this is book number 3 of the Nevernight Chronicles, written by Jay Kristoff. This book has been on my TBR for ages. This is the final installment, like I said. So we follow Mia Corvair, and we come to the end of this tale and whether or not she actually does fulfill her desire for revenge to avenge the death of her family. We encounter some pretty crazy dark magic along the way, some really great fights. These books are grimdark books, so don't pick them up if you're not interested in bloodshed. This one was definitely full, I think, of more bloodshed than God's Grave. I'm not sure on the scale of bloodshed with Nevernight, but lots of gritty stuff, and I was a fan. I really did enjoy this book. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. I had some gripes in it, so if you watch that reading vlog, there is a section that I have some spoilers that I talked about, detailing some of my gripes. A lot of it had to do with a certain love triangle, which I'm not opposed to love stories. I just did not agree with these characters all being in this triangle. That's where my gripe was. Like, I feel like I've invested enough in these characters to have an opinion on them, and these 3 persons in this triangle just didn't work for me, and I was very unhappy that ended up being a prominent part of this book. But other than that, there was some really great stuff in here. Like, the journey that the characters go on through this whole book was awesome. So I can't fault it too much, but this one was a 4 out of 5-star read. Okay, now my second to last book. This one is the book out of all of them, like, even though I've been reading some like crazy, heavy, hectic books for the month of November, this book right here is the book that I am the most proud of finishing for the month of November. And that is Ruin, written by John Gwynne. This is book number 3 of the Faithful and the Fallen series. Remember when I held up my November TBR and I said, I will try to finish it? I can't believe I finished it. This is a book that has been sitting halfway read, not even halfway read, a quarter read on my bookshelf for a year. I started this last December, put it down, and I hadn't picked it up since. I was just vastly intimidated by it. Even though when I was reading this book, I was reminded why, like, these books are really easy to read. I just don't know why the size trips me up so much, because they don't take very long once you get into the action. Now, the one thing that this story does do is it has a gigantic cast of characters. Thankfully, John Gwynne does put a cast of characters at the beginning of each of his novels, but the reason why it slows me down so much is because sometimes a character perspective will pop up that I don't remember who they are and their relation to who, so I have to flip back to the cast of characters. So we're getting into some pretty heavy action here. This whole book was like action nonstop. We are in the Banished Lands. The Banished Lands used to be ruled by giants, and then a war happened, and then the giants were run off, and then men came and took over, but overarching over it all, there's a god war happening between angels and demons. I read 200 pages in one day, and then the next day I was like, I'm just gonna do it, I'm just gonna finish it. So I read 400 pages the next day and I finished this book. This ending though is super sad, super cliffhanging, just like his last ones. I don't even know what we're gonna do for the fourth book. I'm incredibly heartbroken over this ending, probably more than the other two. If you've read this book and if you know and understand me and the kinds of characters that I enjoy, you'll know why I'm the most heartbroken over this one. This one I did rate 4 out of 5 stars. This whole series so far for me is kind of like a 4-star series. It's not ever been, I think, in the same level as some of the other series that I really enjoy. And a lot of it has to do with the amount of characters, because what happens is like we're following a couple different storylines, but then the story won't necessarily jump back to the last character that we were following within that storyline. Like, it follows multiple characters within each storyline, and that can make it kind of confusing. But really great, super happy to have this one done, and now I'm almost finished with this series. And then the final book that I finished in the month of November, this is Charmcaster, written by Sebastian de Castell. This is book number 3 out of the Spellslinger series. This is Sebastian de Castell's young adult series. It follows Kellen of the House of K. He is a failed mage teenager roaming through the frontier and the vast different countries of this land with a squirrel cat business partner and a mentor named Farius Parfax, who still is kind of a mystery to him. I listened to this one on audiobook, and I ended up road tripping out to Houston for Friendsgiving, and I was, I think, like a third of the way through this book, and then on the drive home from Houston we just ended up finishing up the whole rest of the book because it's not very big. So this was another enjoyable read. Action-packed, funny. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And so this book, when I finished it on Saturday, November 30th. Oh, that was like just in the nick of time. I finished on Saturday, November 30th. This officially made November my best reading month ever by finishing 9 books in 1 month. My previous record holder was 8 books, and now I just one-upped it with 9 books, and 9 massive books. Again, I'm super proud. It's like weird. It's weird because I just felt really down on reading at the beginning of the month, and then I just skyrocketed and ended up finishing really strong. All right, so those were all of the books that I read for the month of November. Please put some comments in the comment section below. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Do you agree with my assessment on them? Or let me know what you read for the month of November. I hope everyone had a really great weekend break. If you were in the United States celebrating Thanksgiving or Friendsgiving as I did. But everyone else, I hope your December is off to a good start, that you had a great reading month, and that we're ready to wrap up the year really soon. So you can follow me on my social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. It's at whatcassread, the same as this channel. Super easy to find. And my Goodreads link, as well as the book club Goodreads link. We are group reading The Priory of the Orange Tree this month. That link is listed down below. And you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.